Why do poor people get warned not to take on debt, while rich people seem to use it all the time? I first started thinking about this when I was around 10 years old. I grew up in a Chicago suburb in a regular working class family where money was sacred and debt was seen as dangerous. My parents, especially my mom, constantly told me never take on debt. If you don't have the money, you can't afford it. I remember one moment like it was yesterday. I wanted a new bike. I had saved about half the money, but I was tempted by the idea of using credit to get the bike right away. I asked my mom, "What if I take a loan?" She shook her head and said, "Never. You shouldn't start life in a debt trap." From that day, I had it drilled into my head. Debt is bad, credit is a trap, and poor people should never touch it. Throughout my childhood, I heard these phrases over and over. Teachers at school would say, "Live within your means, don't take on debt." Friends of my parents would add, "Better to save up and buy it yourself than pay the bank interest." It seemed like debt was some kind of deadly punishment. Once you borrowed money, your life would be controlled by the bank. Years went by. I finished high school, then college, and eventually started working. That's when I first noticed the strange contrast. My friends from wealthy families, kids of business owners or investors, were constantly taking loans. And not to buy iPhones or TVs, but to invest, start businesses, or expand their ventures. They knew how to use the bank's money to make more money. I watched this and felt a mix of jealousy and confusion. How was this possible if I had been taught all my life that credit was evil? My first real experience with credit came when I was 25. I won a small lottery prize, about $10,000. That felt like a lot to me, and I decided to use it to pay off my student loans. But my friend James, who works at a bank, looked at me and said, "Are you serious?" I'd do it differently. I'd leave the debt and pay it off gradually, and put that money into something that earns you a return. I thought, wait, what? Why is paying off the bank bad, but keeping the debt and investing good? He explained that rich people use debt as a tool. While you pay small interest to the bank, your money is working for you. You don't spend your own cash up front. You use someone else's money to grow your wealth. Poor people, on the other hand, spend all their savings to pay off debt and don't earn anything from it. Later, I had my own experience with my friend Mark. We were talking about buying a car. I had about $100,000. I could buy the car in cash and forget about it. Mark, who already had a small investment portfolio, said, "Why are you spending your own money? Buy the car on credit at 3% and invest the $100,000. Next year, you can pay off the loan and still make money." I decided to try it. I got a car loan and put my cash into investments at a modest interest rate. A year later, when it was time to pay off the bank, I had extra money from the investments, and paying the loan barely felt like an issue. For the first time, I realized debt could be a tool, not a trap. Since then, I started observing how rich and poor people handle money. Poor people are often scared of debt. They avoid borrowing at all costs, save every penny, and fear spending an extra dollar. That's fine for everyday life, but if you want to scale your income, run your own business, or invest, that mindset limits you. Rich people take debt strategically. They see interest as a small fee for the chance to grow their capital and make someone else's money work for them. I remember another example. My friend John started his small business with a $50,000 loan. He opened a cafe in downtown Los Angeles. We were all like, $50,000 in debt? That's huge risk. But John knew the numbers. The loan interest was less than his expected profit. 2 years later, he paid off the loan and owned a business worth over $200,000. If he had saved money slowly, he would never have opened a cafe in the city center. One more moment that stuck with me was at an annual dinner my investor friend Daniel hosted. He invited me to meet several business owners. They openly discussed investments using borrowed money. Some were buying commercial properties. Some were investing in stocks with leverage. They said straight up, "Why use your own money when you can use someone else's?" Their conversation was basically the philosophy of the rich. I realized debt, for them, is not a risk. It's a growth tool. I started rethinking my old fears. Holding cash in my hands, I always felt it should only be spent on necessities. Now I understood. Money alone doesn't do much. What matters is making it work. And if debt lets you activate that money and earn more, why not? Another time, I won $15,000 in a small contest at work. My first thought was to pay off all my small debts and forget about the money. But a financial advisor friend told me, hey, use $15,000 to cover part of your loan and invest the rest in short term bonds. That way, you're not losing anything and actually creating income. I followed his advice. A month later, the investment returns covered the loan interest. I finally understood that debt can be controlled and used wisely. I realized a simple truth: debt isn't bad. What's bad is not knowing how to use it. Poor people fear debt because they lack a strategy and financial tools to manage risk. The rich take debt to grow capital, invest, and run businesses. Now, when I look back at my old fears about loans, I smile. I understand my parents were just trying to protect me. But life experience and observation showed me the difference between debt that destroys and debt that creates opportunity. That's why poor people fear debt and rich people embrace it. Rich people get one simple fact: why spend your own money when you can use someone else's and make it work for you? I always try to share this lesson with friends and younger relatives. Debt isn't inherently bad. Bad is not knowing how to use it. Learn to manage it. Use it as a tool, and your money will work for you.